The Shooting Range. In this episode, pages of history, old armor's second life, special, testing new satellite-guided bombs, and Metal Beasts, legendary Soviet frontline bomber. The first update of this fall is just around the corner, but we can already take a look at the fresh vehicles. For our first episode, we picked one of the most famous tactical, or as the creators put it, frontline bombers in the world. This machine was designed in the late 1960s and remains in service to this very day. Please welcome the Su-24M, NATO reporting name, Fencer. Its design, size, mass, and combat capabilities are very similar to the F-111. The power plant is a twin turbojet engine with an afterburning power exceeding 13,000 kilogram forces. Of course, it's still a bomber, so don't expect a flying miracle. Its maximum speed turns no heads, and its acceleration is similar to its counterparts from other nations. It'd be unwise to attempt to turn fight in this aircraft. Even with the wing fully straight, the maneuverability of the heavy Su-24 is inferior to any fighter. There's one unique feature, though. Unlike the American aircraft, no loadout will limit the sweep angle of this bomber's wing. The only suitable dogfight tactic for this Su is flying straight ahead, but it does have something stashed. Under its fuselage, you can spot a new addition to War Thunder, the Su-23M autocannon. It sets a new firing rate record with 9,000 shots per minute. Besides, this plane can also carry 3 more gun pods with the same weapon. If you use them all at once, the total 1-second burst exceeds 100 kilograms per second. The only disadvantage of such a rate of fire is that your entire ammo supply can't last much longer than 3 seconds. In addition to guns, the Su-24 can use the R-60M air-to-air missiles. These offer a pretty high maneuverability, but they're easy to deceive with flares. Now, the juiciest part of this bomber's arsenal is reserved for close air support. It has 8 hardpoints that you can fill with rockets of various calibers, conventional bombs between 1 and 1,500 kilos, incendiary pods, and guided munitions with laser, TV, and our first ever satellite homing devices. All in all, this bomber can use a few dozen different types of weapons. We believe the best results can be achieved using the familiar ordnance: the S-13OF and S-25O rockets, the Fab-5 and 1,500, the Ha-25ML and Ha-29TE air-to-surface missiles, as well as guided bombs with calibers 500 and 1,500 kilograms. The new satellite-guided munitions are pretty exciting too, but we'll get back to them right after pages of history. Meanwhile, we can say with confidence, the Su-24 is going to be an amazing top striker in War Thunder. The Swedish army entered the Cold War era in somewhat of a disarray. World War II had ended and left the nation with hundreds of tanks and SPGs. One of those was the M41, a licensed version of the Czechoslovakian VZ-38. It became obsolete even before it was delivered, but those were desperate times when Sweden could use any armor. Another tank was the medium M42 that didn't look much better, but the army at least had warehouses full of spare parts for it. It was time for some upgrades. And while the Ministry of Defense officials were shopping around for new tanks, the engineers were looking for new uses of the old ones. Limited budgets, a large supply of old platforms, and the accelerating arms race forced the Swedish minds to experiment with unconventional reuse methods. In the late 1950s, they came up with the experimental PBV-301 infantry fighting vehicle. The commission picked the one built on the M41 platform. It had a personnel compartment for a squad of 8 in addition to the 2 crew members. The engine could propel this machine to 46 kilometers an hour. Its original armament included a machine gun, but the engineers later replaced it with a 20mm autocannon. This choice gave it more firepower, but there was an additional motivation. They could reuse the autocannons of the scrapped J-21 fighters. Compared to its counterparts, the Swedish combat vehicle was subpar at best, but both the manufacturer and the buyers saw it as an interim solution. The M42 tank had a similar, unoriginal fate. The Swedish military spent about 10 years probing different ideas. They could remake it into an SPG, make a prototype with an autoloader and a long-barreled 75mm cannon, or install a French oscillating turret. But some options were too expensive, while others were too sophisticated. In the end, the military settled on rearming the M42 with a cannon based on a 75mm anti-aircraft gun. The new tank was designated the STRV-74, and frankly, it wasn't up to the standards of the time. Built in the late 1950s, it could probably fight against outdated World War II vehicles. You can also spot the echoes of the war in the IKV-72. It was made in the late 1940s as a 75mm assault gun meant to support infantry. Foreign experience with similar vehicles showed that such a caliber wasn't nearly enough to attack fortifications. Still, the Army was in no rush to upgrade the firepower. The warehouses were still full of 75mm cannons left after the M42 tank. Later, the Army did try a few more powerful guns on the existing IKV-72s until they were converted into tank destroyers and SAMs. Other interim projects had their own outcomes. The PBV-301 remained in service until the early 1970s and showed a dubious performance. It lacked mobility, and the new superstructure would often make the old chassis malfunction or break down. Still, the Army continued using it until all the spare parts were used up. The IKV-72 platform was much better. Its life cycle lasted all the way into the 2000s when Sweden finally retired the SAMs. The STRV-74 was given the easiest path. These tanks had no major upgrades or sophisticated modernization programs. The Army simply held them in service until the late Cold War era, and scrapped them when they were completely outdated. In addition to the anticipated vehicles, the fall update brings one important change to high-rank mixed battles. Many modern aircraft receive guided bombs of a new type for their arsenals: satellite. Let's talk about how these new bombs work and what's the best way to use them. The designs of these new munitions bring nothing extraordinary. They don't have any visible homing devices like laser or TV-guided ones. They're basically regular bombs with guiding fins and an inertial guidance system coupled with a satellite signal receiver. These bombs are used to hit stationary objects whose coordinates are either known beforehand or set by the carrier before the launch. Various nations use their own satellite positioning systems like GPS or GLONASS. To use these bombs in the game, you need to assign keys for activate and deactivate target point. Those aren't new keybinds. You might have used them for CCRP bombing before. Still, it wouldn't hurt to remind you that you can assign these keys by going to Controls, Aircraft, Weaponry. Now you can start a test flight. Set a target point on the ground, drop the bomb around the area you want to hit, and make a turn. You're probably thinking it's very similar to CCRP bombing. Well, that's correct. Only these new bombs can adjust their trajectory, and that gives them a major advantage. First, you don't need to keep your aircraft flying directly towards the drop area, and you can release your ordnance basically at any moment. Of course, you should keep in mind that the bomb won't be able to glide for long because its fins are pretty small. Its maximum range is limited by the velocity and altitude of the carrier aircraft. But you can always try bomb tossing. With some good speed and your nose turned up, you can extend the range by a lot. The second advantage is that you can use your entire loadout at once if you wish. And each of the munitions can go into its own preset point. Since this type of homing device doesn't need a lock, you can perform a mass drop much faster than with TV-guided bombs. Besides, satellite bombs don't care what time of day or what type of weather it is. Rain? Snow? Dust storm? Low visibility? Tons of aircraft flying around? Bring them on! The target coordinates won't change a bit. There's only one major drawback of the new munitions. Once you drop, you commit. If the target leaves the area, the bomb has no idea, and you can't swerve it in any direction. Now, how do you use these munitions? We believe your priority targets should be around popular positions often camped by tanks, strategic points that the enemy just began taking, And of course, anti-air systems that forget to move while expecting an easy target. By the way, a target's coordinates remain there even if you lose sight of it. You can use that against anti-aircraft vehicles by dropping bombs over obstacles. All in all, satellite bombs are something in between laser, TV-guided, and conventional bombs. Share your experiences in the comments. Meanwhile, we'll answer some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Builder in Style. What's the difference between CCRP and CCIP, and how do I use them on the A21? Hi, Builder in Style. In CCIP mode, the computer calculates the drop point continuously and displays it in the pilot's sight. In CCRP mode, the pilot marks a point where they want their munition to hit, and the computer calculates the best time to drop it. The Swedish A21 only has CCRP, and you'll need to bind a key to activate and deactivate target point. Now you can mark a point on the surface where you want the bomb to land, and a line will show you the optimal flight direction. Press the drop key in advance, and the bomb will be dropped automatically. Dragoon Oli asks, how many aircraft in War Thunder have rocket boosters? Hey Dragoon Oli, let's count them all. 6 A4 Skyhawks, 5 IL-228s, 2 Mirage 3s, 2 Me-262Cs, the Kika, the Tu-14T, the AR-234B2, and the Me-264. A total of 19 aircraft, unless we missed something. Another question comes from Chili Penguin. Why does the Belgian F-16AM have a hole in the back just under the tail? The other F-16s don't have that hole. Hey there, it's true, some modifications of the F-16 have this hole, like the MLU. It can be used to install a drag chute or other equipment. The Belgian version has a radar warning system there. Jerry writes, what's the difference between the Me-163B and Me-163B0? Hi Jerry, the difference is their forward-firing armament. The early modification has two 30mm Mk108 autocannons. They're plenty powerful against any target, but their poor ballistics makes landing hits tricky. The Me-163B0 is armed with two 20mm MG151s with an option to add two more. They're much more efficient, so the battle rating of the late version is higher. And the last comment for today was written by Diego Prieto Diaz. Did you know the F-15C in real life has AIM-9X? Hi Diego. Yeah, we know, thanks. Many aircraft already in our game served for long years and tried all kinds of weapons, both old and highly advanced. However, we're taking caution when adding new weapons to the game to keep the balance. That's why some missiles still need to wait for their War Thunder debut. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to update your bomb's navigation app, leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.